My name is Clara Simpson, and for most of my life, I was absolutely certain that there was nothing beyond this physical world. No heaven, no afterlife, no spirit, no grand purpose. Just flesh, bone, atoms, and energy. I didn't just identify as an atheist, I lived and breathed it. It wasn't a phase or a quiet opinion I kept to myself. It was the foundation of my worldview, my approach to life, and my guiding principle in everything I did. I believed in what could be measured. What could be proven? If you couldn't replicate it in a lab, test it under controlled conditions, or analyze it with logic and reason, then it didn't exist, or at least, it wasn't worth my attention. Emotions? Chemicals? Consciousness? The result of billions of neurons firing in just the right pattern. Death? The end. Final. Like blowing out a candle, quiet, complete, and empty. I was trained as a biologist. I spent my days in a research lab, peering through microscopes, mapping cell structures, and analyzing patterns in DNA. I was fascinated by life, but only in the sense that it was a complex, elegant process. Not something mystical. Not something sacred. Just a marvel of evolution and probability. Nothing more. People around me, friends, colleagues, even family, knew not to bring up religion or spirituality in conversation. I wasn't hostile, but I didn't entertain what I saw as fantasy. To me, faith was a coping mechanism. A way for people to make peace with what they couldn't explain. I didn't look down on believers, but I didn't believe with them. I preferred the cold, clean clarity of facts. My routines reflected that same simplicity. Every morning I woke up before sunrise, laced up my shoes, and went for a long run. Not for peace of mind or connection to anything deeper, but because it kept my heart strong, my lungs efficient, and my brain sharp. I counted my steps. Measured my pulse. Tracked every stat. Afterward, I would drink a protein shake, review my lab schedule, and head off to work with a neatly packed lunch and a list of goals. In the lab, I was known for my precision. My colleagues trusted me to catch errors in data sets or point out inconsistencies in reports. I didn't have time for philosophical meanderings or abstract wonderings about the meaning of it all. I believed in what was real, what could be seen, weighed, or tested. The world was mechanical, beautiful in its complexity, but in the end, just a system. Everything had a cause, a trigger, a chain reaction. My evenings were quiet. I didn't watch television or scroll endlessly through social media. I read scientific journals, annotated new research, sometimes rewatched lectures on evolutionary biology or quantum physics. Not because I was trying to find answers to any spiritual questions, I didn't believe there were any, but because I craved understanding of how things worked. The joy of discovering a new function in a protein chain meant more to me than any religious parable ever could. Until the accident. It began like any other day. I remember the air that morning, cool, clean, and brushed with the scent of fallen leaves. The sun had just crested above the skyline, casting long, golden streaks across the pavement. I had my earbuds in, listening to a podcast on evolutionary biology as I made my way through the last stretch of my morning jog. After finishing, I stopped by the small cafe on 4th and Maple to grab my usual black coffee. The barista smiled, asked about my lecture plans. We exchanged quick words, nothing out of the ordinary. I checked the time, 7:48 a.m., just enough minutes to walk back to campus without rushing. I took the familiar path along the main road, my mind already rehearsing the first few lines of my lecture. The traffic was light, and the city hadn't fully awakened yet. As I approached the intersection just outside the biology building, I waited patiently at the crosswalk. The red hand blinked, and I instinctively looked both ways. The light turned. The white walking symbol lit up. I stepped forward. What happened next unfolded so fast, it burned itself into my memory in fragments, like shattered glass catching light. From the corner of my eye, I caught something moving too quickly. A flash of metallic blue. Screeching tires. A sudden gust of wind, strong and sharp, like it was trying to tear me from the earth. I turned my head and locked eyes with the driver whose face was frozen in horror. Then came the impact. It wasn't the hit itself that I remember most. It was the sound. A sickening, hollow thud as the car struck my side. I was lifted off the ground. My body folded, weightless for a second, before slamming against the hood and then crashing onto the asphalt. I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt crushed, my thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. The sky above me tilted and spun. I tasted blood. Someone screamed. A woman, I think. Feet rushed toward me. I heard a man yelling for someone to call 911. Hands hovered but didn't touch me, no one sure what to do. My vision dimmed at the edges, sounds grew distant, like I was sinking below the surface of the world I once understood. Sirens arrived soon after. Paramedics knelt beside me, cutting through my clothes, calling out numbers and instructions I couldn't make sense of. A mask was placed over my face. My eyes fluttered. I felt the vibrations of the gurney as they wheeled me toward the ambulance. Every bump in the road was a distant echo. The hospital lights were bright, too bright. Faces swirled above me like clouds, voices barking orders, machines beeping erratically. My body felt heavy. My mind started to let go. I remember the exact moment the silence took over, the monitors flatlined, and I felt everything go still. They said my heart stopped. That I died, clinically. But to me, it felt like I was waking up into something I never knew existed. As I drifted deeper into that radiant realm, the light surrounding me began to take form, not human, but not formless either. It was a presence, tall, luminous, and gentle in its energy. Though it never spoke aloud, I understood everything it conveyed. It communicated through thoughts, feelings, a sort of direct knowing. And the moment I sensed it fully, I felt no fear. Only familiarity. As if I'd known it forever. As if it had always walked with me, silently, even when I didn't believe in anything beyond this life. This being, my guide, gently invited me to see more. Not with force, not with command, but with a kind of loving encouragement. Then the scene around me began to change again. I wasn't in the light anymore. I was in memories. Only, these memories weren't like daydreams or flashbacks. They were vivid, three-dimensional, alive. I was reliving moments from my life, watching them unfold as both myself and the people around me. It began with small things, childhood moments, conversations I'd forgotten. Sitting beside a classmate in third grade who had no friends. The day I snapped at my mother out of frustration. Laughing with a stranger in a bookstore. Tiny moments, but here, they mattered. With each memory, I didn't just remember, I felt. Not just my feelings, but theirs. Every time I showed kindness, I felt their relief, their gratitude, even when they didn't say a word. But when I was dismissive or unkind, I felt their confusion, their hurt. Even the things I thought were trivial or private echoed outward. I watched a scene where I chose logic over empathy in a debate with a close friend. In that moment, I had felt proud of my reasoning. But now I saw his silent pain, the way my words had made him feel small. I had never known. No one told me. But here, it was as clear as sunlight. There was no judgment from the guide, no condemnation. Just understanding. This was not punishment. This was learning. And the deeper I went into this review, the more I saw a single thread running through everything: love. The absence of it, the offering of it, the way it quietly shaped the lives we touch. And not love in the romantic sense, but love as awareness, kindness, intention. Every action we take carries energy, ripples moving through lives, across years, unseen but deeply felt. At one point, I turned to the guide, or perhaps the guide turned to me, and the message was crystal clear. You mattered more than you know. Every person does. Every moment holds a chance to heal or to harm. Choose love. Always choose love. I remember feeling a kind of ache then. Not sorrow, not guilt, but the realization of how often I had moved through life half asleep. How easy it had been to live for achievement, for control, for intellect, while missing the soft, sacred spaces where compassion lives. And yet, I didn't feel ashamed. I felt awakened. The guide stood with me silently. I don't know exactly when I realized it, but something began to shift. The warmth of the light, the embrace of that realm, the stillness of the space around me, it all began to change, as if the edges of that world were slowly softening, gently dissolving. The guide, who had been beside me all this time, turned to me, not physically, but energetically, and I instantly understood. The moment had come. I had to make a choice. I could stay in this place of peace, of unconditional love, or I could return. And I felt torn in a way I never had before. Why would I ever want to leave a realm where there was no fear, no confusion, no loneliness? Where every part of me, my thoughts, my flaws, my strengths, was seen and loved entirely? Here, there was no time, no pain, no uncertainty. But then I saw them, flashes of faces, my sister, my father, my best friend from college, even a coworker I barely knew but who had always looked up to me. I saw tears in their eyes. I saw their prayers. I felt the weight of their longing to have me back, their need for my presence in their lives, even if they didn't understand it fully. And then, as if on cue, came another knowing from the guide, there is still work for you to do. More to grow, more to give, more to love. Your life is not yet complete. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't an order. It was simply truth. And for the first time in my existence, I trusted something completely. I nodded, not with my head, but with my soul. I chose to return. Not because I was afraid of death, but because I had finally learned what it meant to truly live. The return wasn't instantaneous. It felt like being pulled gently through layers of energy, like descending slowly into thicker and denser air. The brilliance of the other realm began to fade. The colors dulled, the peace dimmed slightly. And then I felt a jolt. A sudden pressure. Noise. Pain. Weight. Gravity. I gasped. I opened my eyes to the stark white of the hospital ceiling. Harsh fluorescent lights above me. A nurse standing nearby, suddenly rushing out to call someone. Machines beeping. A sense of heaviness pressing down on every part of my body. I had returned. And the moment I came back, I cried, not because I was in pain, but because I missed that place. That light. That knowing. But I also cried because I carried it with me. The memory. The message. The love. Even through the tubes, the wires, the exhaustion, I whispered one thing to myself, over and over again. Remember. Don't forget what you saw. Don't forget who you are now. And I never did. The following days were unlike anything I had ever known. My body was battered, sore, healing inch by inch, but my spirit felt entirely different, like someone had opened a door I didn't even know existed. Everything had changed. And yet, everything looked the same. Lying in that hospital bed, I felt as though I was walking between two worlds. Doctors and nurses came in with charts and checklists, speaking in terms of survival, injuries, and recovery timelines. But my mind was somewhere else, somewhere quiet and profound. I couldn't unsee what I had seen. I couldn't unknow what I had come to understand in that realm. I began to crave silence, stillness. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because that was where I could still feel it, that warmth, that peace. I would close my eyes and try to remember the softness of the light, the telepathic guidance, the sensation of total love. Not to escape this world, but to stay connected to what I had experienced. For someone who had once lived by reason, logic, and hard evidence, this new reality was disorienting. I didn't even believe in anything spiritual before. I used to scoff at the idea of the soul, or life after death. But now, I had seen it. I had lived it. And no textbook, no peer-reviewed journal, could take that away from me. Once home, I couldn't just return to life as it was. The television, the news, the mindless scrolling, it all felt hollow. I needed meaning. I needed grounding. So I started small. I would sit quietly for 10 minutes each morning and just breathe. That breath became a lifeline, my connection to something greater than myself. And slowly, that practice grew. Meditation became my sanctuary. Gratitude became my new language. I started seeing the beauty in simple things, the warmth of sunlight on my hands, the rhythm of rain on my windows, the way someone's eyes lit up when they were truly seen. These weren't just small details anymore. They were sacred. I read books I never would have considered before, on consciousness, spirituality, the mysteries of the soul. I joined quiet communities of others who had experienced something similar. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was part of something much, much bigger. Something eternal. There were still hard days, of course. Days where I doubted myself, where the noise of the world drowned out the quiet of the soul. But I always came back to what I'd learned during my NDE, that love is the thread that weaves through everything. That every choice, every action, carries a ripple. That we are all connected. And I knew then that this awakening wasn't just for me. It was for everyone. It's been years since that moment, the accident, the light, the return. And yet, it still lives in me as vividly as the day it happened. Not a dream. Not a hallucination. But a shift in everything I once believed to be true. I no longer need proof of something beyond this life, I've lived it. I've touched it. I breathed in its peace and walked through its beauty. And what I brought back with me isn't a doctrine or a rulebook. It's a knowing. A knowing that we are here for love. That every act of kindness echoes louder than we can ever imagine. That compassion matters more than we know. I've come to understand that you don't have to die to wake up. You don't need a near-death experience to start living from your soul. It begins in the smallest of choices, how you treat the person in front of you, how you speak to yourself, what energy you carry into the world each day. To those listening who are struggling, who feel lost or uncertain, know this, there is more to this life than what you see. You are more than a body. More than a name. You are light. You are love. And you are deeply, endlessly connected to something greater. You don't have to believe me. I didn't believe in any of this either, until I had no choice. But perhaps my story can be a mirror for you, a reflection of a truth you've always carried inside but were too busy, too skeptical, or too afraid to explore. Let this be your invitation. To live awake. To love deeper. To be present. Because this life, messy and beautiful and brief, is a gift. And it's never too late to remember who you really are.